You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, flying you to new destinations at half the price. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week, we have been watching Captain's Holiday. It first aired the week of April 2nd, 1990. It was written by Ira Steven Behr and directed by Chip Chalmers. Hi, Chip. James, what happens in this episode?
The crew notice that Picard is feeling stressed, and so Dr. Crusher orders him to take a vacation. Picard is reluctant because he loves to work, but eventually agrees to take a trip to Risa, when Troy threatens a visit from her mother. While trying to relax, he gets embroiled in a plot involving an ancient artifact involving the Ferengi, some unconvincing aliens from the future, and Vash, a human woman who Picard describes as trouble. There's some walking through caves, lots of tight shorts, some digging, and a really unconvincing prop in this subpar Indiana Jones style adventure. But a good time was had by all.
Thanks, James. Alex, you've never watched Star Trek The Next Generation up to this point, and you recently watched this episode for the first time. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, due to an unfortunate mix-up, I accidentally ended up instead listening to Dreadlock Holiday by 10cc. It didn't have a plot as such, but they really don't like cricket. In fact, they love it. But, you know, just a group of white men talking in cod foreign accents, slightly racistly in a way. It felt like being at home. But then I watched this episode and, yeah, it was quite good.
I think the premise, Picard is stressed out, send him on holiday. He's not a man that takes holidays. Well, that's it. He's not a man that takes holidays. He's not someone who likes to unwind or relax.
He's that prick in the office who doesn't take any of his annual leave and then gets to November and decides to take 3 weeks off at once. Sharon's had her holiday booked for 3 months, but she has to move her plans to accommodate that prick.
To be fair, that's better than the people who keep constantly block booking all of summer because they have kids. They're the people who really annoy me.
Damn them, continuing the human race.
They need to leave early to go to inset days and things like that. Lots of rubbish.
If they wanted kids, they shouldn't have a job as well.
That's right.
This has been a party broadcast from the Conservative Party.
Anyway, let's get back on topic. So, Risa, this is the first time we're seeing it. It's sort of the Star Trek equivalent of a Club 1830 holiday, maybe a pleasure planet where love is free and the sun always shines, and you'll get some splash on your book if you're not careful.
And of course there's the men kissing men and the women kissing women. They're just off screen. They're right there, but the camera is just not on them right now. But they're there. Don't worry, they're there.
Look over there. That guy's got his lad out.
Gene Roddenberry insisted that they were all there, just not in shot.
The thing is, I think this is an episode that would have very much benefited from some location shooting.
What makes you think that?
Captain, you'll love it. It's kind of like going to a swingers party, but not on a beach or anywhere exotic. It's basically in a studio backlot with some deck chairs.
Well, that's the thing. There's no matte painting. There is no sense of scale. There is no sense of paradise. It is just there's some pillars. There's a deck chair. There's sort of some bright light. It is a pure excuse for a pleasure planet. It is at best a sort of corner of Centre Parks that you'd stay out of because it probably smells like bins.
Yeah, a sort of 1-star hotel on the Costa del Sol that's really fallen into incredible disrepair. But people go because just the masseuses are willing to just crack one out for you.
Well, that is why it's a pleasure planet, isn't it? The sexy people in revealing outfits. That is the sole reason that people go to this planet, seemingly.
I understand, like, it's just Riker sort of said, oh, off you go there, here's the holiday planet. Picard would not go to Risa. Like, Picard would have heard of Risa. It has been known, because it's in an episode of Enterprise, so it must be true. It's been around for like 200 years, so it's not like it's not famous for what it's famous for. So if you put a cock-shaped statue out, you know, someone will come in and offer you some happy swimming time.
It's the equivalent of you having a show set right now and sending the crotchety old boss to Ibiza.
Yeah, it's a bit like Bad Dad in the Adam and Joe show, and that's a very niche reference.
That's the most obscure reference yet.
Oh, I don't know. I think we can give it a run for its money. But they do try and give a reason for it, that Picard absolutely definitely won't go to Risa. By the way, Captain, my mother's coming. Your mother? Risa it is. I can't stand that woman. And I was watching it thinking, Christ, it's like I'm watching Terry and June. A pleasure planet, you say? Dun 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 dun.
See those opening shots on Risa, and I know it wasn't meant to be seen in HD, but I'm fairly sure that's a see-through swimsuit that helpful pleasure lady is wearing. If you look really closely, if you just stare at it, if you pause it and zoom in, you can definitely see sort of shadow of nipple.
Well, this was actually a comment that I noticed in the trivia section on Memory Alpha. And this is the comment.
Of course it was.
This is exactly the whole comment. Some of the women, like Joval, working at the resort, seem to have no bikini tops, but are only covered by the resort staff vest, a transparent rain vest. That was the one piece of trivia they had for this episode.
And you know what? It doesn't even rain on Risa, so it's just...
It does in that Deep Space Nine episode, doesn't it?
Yes, but that's because they break the weather computer.
Right.
It doesn't have to rain. On a planet like that, specialising in what that specialises in, you'd want a waterproof Mac as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right.
I mean, just on a serious point here, staff of that planet are sex workers, aren't they?
Yes.
But it's the future. It's all okay. Men kissing men, women kissing women.
In waves of cum.
It is explained later that basically the planet exists and it is a holiday place that welcomes anyone because the people there are just naturally just welcoming, pleasuring people. They want to make everyone happy and comfortable. So it's fine. It's all fine. It's not problematic in any way. Everything's fine. Let's not think about that aspect. And let's be honest, I think there's only one woman on the entire planet other than Vash. So, I mean, is it a planet? Is it just a tiny rock somewhere? It's a horrible, all-inclusive resort. Did anyone else notice Picard's outfit when he is on the ship and just leaving? And he's definitely not wearing any underwear. I feel the HD rather brings out the swing. Very sort of loose clothing in the future that's just a little bit too tight in the wrong areas.
We've never seen any of the crew dressed like that outside of their uniforms before, have we?
These are my holiday clothes.
That is a ludicrous outfit. That's like a clown costume.
The casual clothes in Star Trek are never, ever good. If you think of the sort of stuff that they're wearing in Star Trek 4, I think Chekhov's outfit is particularly funny. The one that they sort of rejected halfway through. And if you look at something like Insurrection, where, as Mr. Plinkett helpfully pointed out,
beiges. Earth tones, people. Browns and beiges. Browns and beiges. The J.C. Penney collection.
Yeah, so there's exactly that. But this is a bit just, oh, we've got some spare curtains, let's wrap them round Picard and staple them somewhere.
Just make sure his cock is covered.
But get his chest out. He's been going on about getting his chest out for the last 3 weeks. Every week we've got a scene where he's got his chest out.
Look, I've done over 2 series of this show now, and if there's one thing that I think the fans want to see at this point, they've seen Ferengi, they've seen Klingons, they've seen Romulans, but have they seen these?
But that's fine. I'm happy to see some middle-aged man
Nipples.
nudity. I'm all for equal opportunities for that. The Return of the Ferengi. Here, they were set up as a big bad. They're being used in a sort of comedy way. They're threatening, but they're not really threatening. The makeup looks terrible here, incidentally, I think. And I don't know how I feel about the performance particularly, but it's all right. There's no jumping up and down, which is an improvement on the past, but it's okay.
Am I misremembering, or do the Ferengi have sort of sharp, fangy, triangular sort of teeth?
No, that's right, they do.
Yeah, I'm not really sure that's the clientele you want on a sex planet.
They welcome everybody.
Not with some serious lacerations, they wouldn't.
So, like, a lot of the Ferengi sexuality is focused around their earlobes.
Umax.
And what happens there? Is there a mass ejaculation of wax?
Well, no, that's what Umax is, isn't it? It's just where they gently caress the ears. You don't want to be rough with those things.
I mean, what does a cotton bud mean to them?
I suppose it's the equivalent of sticking an endoscopic camera up your cock.
Yeah, everyone gets lonely.
Shall we talk about Picard's cock statue?
Okay, let's talk about what's it called again?
Now, yes, I heard the name that Riker said that he wanted Picard to get this thing. I had to stop it. I had to rewind it. I had to call my wife in for a second opinion because I was convinced that Riker said, well, when you go down there, can you bring me back something? It's called a whore gun. What? A whore gun? I mean, if I could believe anyone was going to ask for a whore gun, yeah, that is the character.
You know, they have subtitles on these Blu-rays. You could have just turned that on. It would have saved you a lot of trouble.
Well, that was my next port of call. Also, Picard is quite liberally waving that statue around. Now, if we just stop and consider for a minute that essentially this symbol of male fertility is just a wooden cock, he is just waving it around in that woman's face in a manner similar to Frank Drebin in The Naked Gun when he bursts through the window with the stone cock in his hand.
I guess you can read into the imagery whatever you want. Bring your own subtext, as they say, and you have fun with that.
Well, if you take the surface level shine off it and you start looking at it as he sat there with a wooden cock on the table, and then you start just breaking down the lines into the... Look, I want to make it very clear. I'm not interested in shagging. I wasn't necessarily offering shagging. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I mistook you for a prostitute. Because, essentially, that's the scene. They've just dressed it up in some Star Trek language.
It's an innocent comic misunderstanding. It's generic sitcom style. Oh, let's get the fuddy-duddy in a crazy situation. It doesn't need to be analysed.
We've all seen that episode of Last of the Summer Wine. You know, the lads go over to Norma Batty's, they mistake her for a prostitute, and then they go down the hill in a tin bath. It's the classic comedy trope.
We also have the character of Vash, who is perhaps the most significant character in this episode, who is actually, you know, a guest character who's interesting, a love interest that is actually interesting, who brings something out different in our character, and you kind of want to spend a bit more time with them because they're kind of fun. Well, that's what I think anyway. What do you think of Vash, Alex?
Yeah, she was enjoyable to spend time with. It's in that sort of that roguish mold that we've had a few times, sort of sub Han Solo, Indiana Jones kind of thing. Perhaps in this case, the latter highlighted by costume and setting and whatnot. Perhaps the latter half of the episode does have a slight sort of Indiana Jones feel to it.
I think there's also the element, without being too reductive, of the sort of femme fatale, a bit of that, you know, Dixon Hill fantasy woman type thing, but in reality, and I think the performance actually elevates it to far more than that. It's, you know, it's a proper foil for Picard. It's someone who doesn't follow into that kind of Starfleet mold, who is a bit dangerous. You're trouble. You're very, very naughty. Sorry, that's a bit disturbing. But you wouldn't necessarily think of this as a love interest for Picard, I don't think. I think maybe their default would be the sort of what they do in Generations in that fantasy sequence, just the Victorian governess almost, but actually this makes kind of sense to me now that they've done it.
I think it's a bit refreshing, actually, that we have a character like this who's a woman, because up until this point, the kind of lovable rogues have all been men. They have been the Han Solo type people, and, you know, it's been a love interest for Troy. You know, they're branching out, at least. Which I think is something Ira Stephen Bear mentioned about making Vash's character. About writing Vash's character, I should say.
You do also have that interesting element that it brings, that by it being Picard that you're dealing with, you bring out, at least initially, an almost sort of slightly prudish nature. And when you're trying to go for that comedic element, that's the best character to do it with. And they've kind of tried with other characters in the past. They've kind of tried with Riker. That normally comes off disturbing. But doing it with Picard, what the interesting thing that generates is that you can start off with that sort of awkward, prudish nature of, well, I prefer to get to know my women before they kiss me. But if you want to touch me, I wouldn't object at all. But then, gradually, as the episode goes on, that falls into the background, and then you start to build up the actual sort of love interest plot, and that overtakes it, and then you're building that in with the plot itself. In that sense, it's actually structured very well. It makes it more interesting by choosing that character. It takes what could have been... I mean, Christ, imagine this episode with Geordie.
Vash would have been a hologram.
I think the character of Picard, especially when, really, throughout the series up to this point, you don't really do romantic stories with him. And actually, there's not a lot of it throughout the series. There's definitely not any of it in the movies. Somewhat frustratingly at times.
There's some in Insurrection as well.
Yeah, but they never kiss. There's no kissing in Insurrection.
You demand kissing.
He goes on shore leave for however long at the end of it. He's clearly going down there to rut.
But I think this is a new and sort of interesting angle to basically do a kind of almost a romance novel with Captain Picard as the star of it, and that's kind of what it is. It is almost that romancing the stone style story, you know, because it's not quite Indiana Jones, is it?
Well, I think it's got a sort of distinctly old Hollywood flavour to it, in the way that love interest thing builds, but also you've got that discovering the treasure. I say Indiana Jones, but Indiana Jones itself is just trying to replicate that old sort of Saturday matinee feel anyway. Those sort of action adventures. This feels like one of those. It has that distinctly black and white feel to it. If you change the dialogue around, change the setting, it could easily fit into any other location. If they were searching in somewhere, say like Egypt, you could entirely believe that wasn't ever anything other than the original intention of the script.
Except for the fact they've got aliens from the future. That kind of feels out of place.
Yes, and far less people offered sex on deck chairs in those films as well. But
I want to talk about these aliens from the future because I get it. It's sort of like that whole there's 10 different people after the crystal. We're all going on this chase to try and get this thing. But that feels so off to me. They do not fit to me. It just feels like almost an addition too far. I don't think we need them because they set up the artifact, which could have just been, this is the blah that's blah and it's worth all this money, and then it's a hugely significant artifact from the future taken back through time and has the power to do something, and it's got the power of a star inside it, and it's like, right, okay, that seems like overkill to me, especially when it looks like a rejected prop from the Crystal Maze. It just feels like that's upping the ante a bit too much in what is kind of a light episode, and then Picard's fulfilling a prophecy. It's almost like there's too much story in that bit, because it's only the second half of the episode. I would almost say, start with Picard on the planet, and then just go from there. We don't need any of the stuff at the start, really.
I kind of feel that the whole thing of them coming from the future is to try and make the plot clever, and it doesn't really work. There's too many inconsistencies with it. I don't feel that the object that they're after, it's never explained enough to me what it will do for me to be invested in each party trying to keep a hold of it. Whereas I don't mind so much in Picard hunting for it, because I just treat it like a treasure. But when it's something that they're coming back in time for, I don't buy it so much. There's also a logical inconsistency, as there is in any time travel story. The whole idea of they know where it's going to be found. They know where it's going to be destroyed. Why do they just turn up to those two moments in time? It's as illogical as the Terminator films.
Yeah, I think it's trying to put a science fiction spin on just the protagonist, and then you've got the thief, and then you've sort of got the authorities, I guess, and it's that's what they're trying to do, and you're almost like, well, you didn't need to.
Let's be honest. In an Indiana Jones film, they would be the Nazis.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is, but it's just the episode doesn't have enough room for that. So what's the point? I don't feel it adds anything to the episode. If you just had a power-hungry thief after it at the end, that would have been equally as effective.
But look at where we've come from. Can you imagine back at the start of season 1, any of us turning around and saying, this episode simply doesn't have the room for some Nazis?
The design of the aliens isn't bad, except for the costumes, where they seem to be wearing some very odd pants.
But then so's Picard.
Oh my god. I mean, we could dedicate a whole section to his shiny, shiny tight pants. What? Why is he just so naked? I could imagine him more in a sort of a white linen suit, perhaps, a nice sun hat. But no, he is, he's just displaying himself. No wonder people think he's got his whore gun out.
I'm not usually one to look straight at that area of a character when they're in revealing clothes, but even I was fixed on Picard's crotch.
So the ending where this artifact, she's double-crossed him, who would have thought? Again, very genre savvy, it knows exactly what it's doing, but then it's Riker, please destroy it with transporter code 14, although we don't know that's the destruction. And then this thing, which is the most powerful thing in the universe, can just be exploded by a transporter beam. I mean, it's a little bit lame, but again, the whole episode is so kind of disposable in many ways that I guess you just kind of go with it. It's fine. Oh my god, I said it again. I've said it's fine again.
It's a silly, fun romp.
A silly, fun romp, exactly. So I shouldn't be getting caught up in the details of the ending of the MacGuffin, which is just nonsense.
And of course, a silly, fun romp is exactly what Picard had in the cave.
Yes.
Did they have sex? I don't know. Is it implied they had sex?
Yes.
Normally I'd be looking at Patrick Stewart for obvious signs of sex here, but it'd be very difficult to tell.
Yeah. Well, I think they did, but that can be your own headcanon, so to speak.
And you have written fan fiction.
But anyway, does anyone have any further thoughts as we round this up?
Only in as much as the end of the episode didn't feel wasted to me. I felt that the end of the last episode was rushed, and the parts that I'd enjoyed suffered from that. Aside from the quick destruction of the object in this, the actual final scenes of, closing up in what would be a soap opera as the music starts to swell, I thought all of that was played out about right. When Picard goes back to the Enterprise, how did you enjoy your trip? And we need to talk about your whore gun. It's finish on a joke. Well, it's not a joke, really, is it? It's a funny aside. Well, it's not a funny aside. It's a line. But they finished on a line. So yeah,
I think it's very much a sort of almost a classic series kind of. Let's have a scene at the end where we kind of sum it up and have a little bit of a laugh. You could almost have had that type music coming on, and as everyone gives a wry look to each other.
Did you have a good time, Captain? Did you bring anything back?
You see, that sounds like it could be the name of an alien artifact as well.
In the future, chlamydia is a very important thing to our people.
Shall we go to Quickfire?
Quickfire.
Max Grodenchik plays the Ferengi in this episode. He will later play Rom in Deep Space Nine, and he's much better in that, with a much more nuanced and fun performance, and better makeup as well. Everything is better, and I like him.
I'm afraid, friends, it's that time once again where we turn to perpetual Tinder botherers, the Star Trek The Next Generation Nitpicker's Guide. What could they choose to pick in this instalment? Well, I think we'll go to a point, but we'll skip the first line of their comment. Oh no, I'll add it to the end instead. They say, just before he and Vash leave the resort for the cave, Sovak confronts them. After Picard knocks him unconscious, Vash helps him put on their shared backpack. The straps on the backpack have large padded sections that are supposed to be used on the shoulders. Picard uses them for handholds! Open brackets. Actually, I think Patrick Stewart just didn't want to waste time adjusting them during the shot, so he did the next best thing. He tried to cover them up. He has this quirky expression on his face for the last few moments of the scene, like he wants the shot to end quickly. And preceding all of that, they start with the line, Picard needs to get out more!
How did they get a book deal?
I mean, anyone can write a book now. I mean, I think the sadder thing is that Alex bought it.
I don't know, I think if we've proved anything, it's that not everyone can write a book.
Hey Alex, would you like Vash to come back? Would you like to see this character again?
I'm indifferent.
Hmm.
I mean, like, if she was Maid Marian, would that work for you?
And if Picard was Robin Hood?
Good lord.
According to the Star Trek The Next Generation companion, the storyline that the episode ultimately went with grew out of Picard's desire for more sex and shooting. Yeah, we're pretty sure of that.
I'm just wondering if you could have me get a babe and shoot a gun.
I like dirt buggies. Could you perhaps put one of those in the script?
Risa will go on to appear again in a very bad Deep Space Nine episodes and a fairly okay episode of Enterprise, like all episodes of Enterprise.
Asked on her thoughts on the episode, Jennifer Hetrick, who played Vash, said, I don't watch much television.
I do like how Memory Alpha writes up Chaos on the Bridge. They write it up with, Something that Roddenberry was keen to see in the episode was copious amounts of erotic activity. Particularly between same-sex partners.
What do you want for the costumes this week, Gene? Crotchless.
The costumes are either crotchless or only crotch.
Only crotch. I want crotch everywhere. Everyone's a giant crotch.
Hey, Mari, can we have just a creature that's just a giant pair of tits?
Gene, that was last series. I don't even work here anymore. You just keep me in your desk drawer.
Wesley and Geordie are not in this episode, and nobody noticed nor missed them.
There are some games he doesn't know how to play.
Yeah, imagine if he'd fallen into a bush on this planet.
This episode represented Chip Chalmers' directorial debut. He says of the episode, "This episode was also terrific because Patrick is a wonderful actor. The other thing that stood out for me is that I got a wonderful actress. And what also stands out for me is that I got very, very sick for a couple of days. And during those 2 days, we were shooting on Risa, actually stage 16. I was running a 102-degree temperature. There were wonderful people who put up a cot with lots of petting and a pillow right behind Risa. I can look back on that show and smile for a lot of reasons."
Oh, that sounds terrible.
I'd go out, I'd say action, shoot. We made it through those 2 days, everybody rallying around. And then I'd go and lay down on my cot, and I'd pass out for 15 or 20 minutes while they set up. Wonderful memories. My mother died on set. Happiest day of my life.
Well, thanks for listening again. Did you know you can leave a review for us on iTunes and now on Stitcher Radio? So why not go and do that if you're in the mood, and it helps other people find the podcast. We will be back again very soon where we'll be talking about Tin Man. Looking forward to that. But for now, goodbye.
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 I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. Yes.
Maurice Hurley?
I just came back to tell you that I'm feeling so much better.